Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I hope you're enjoying the summer break, but you are ready to jump back into Formula 1 when we have Belgium in a couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, I thought what I'd do is delve into driver academies. I was looking at them the other day. I was sitting down and thinking, who's going to come into Formula 1 soon? Are there any prospects coming through the driver academies I should sort of look into whilst I've got a break from Formula 1? And then I thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if the Formula 1 teams on the grid at the moment could only pick driver academy graduates? So what I thought I'd do is look down the grid and make basically a 2022 driver grid with only academy graduates. So the teams on the grid can only pick drivers that they have brought through to the sport. So I'm going to start off with Mercedes because it seemed fairly straightforward. Mercedes have brought through Ocon and Russell. I think Russell's probably going to be a Mercedes driver next year anyway. And Ocon has been incredibly good since he's come into Formula 1. Very good this season. Had a bit of a dip in form, but I think will come back even better in the second half of the season. I think this basically picks itself. Very easy for Mercedes. If they had to pick two drivers, Russell and Ocon would be the two. And similarly for McLaren, McLaren have two exceptional drivers on the grid at the moment in time. Anyway, Lando Norris and of course Hamilton came through the McLaren Academy as well. Quite a long time ago, what it feels like. So Hamilton and Mercedes have become synonymous with one another, but we have to remember that back in the day, McLaren was the home of Hamilton. And I think, again, easy picking, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, what a team that would be for McLaren in 2022. If they had those two drivers, oh my goodness me. Imagine if Hamilton finally hangs up his boots at Mercedes and just has one last season at McLaren. Wouldn't it be amazing to see these two in the same team together? I personally think so. It would be electric between the two of them. And then finally, the third one that picks itself, to be honest with you, is the Williams drivers. Again, a fairly easy pick for Williams. I think they stick with Latifi and they pick up Bottas. Bottas could be at Williams next season anyway, and Bottas is an incredibly well-established driver on the grid. I think you easily pick those two. Yes, there's Aitken or Ticktum, but I went for Latifi and Bottas as the Williams drivers if they had to pick from their academy. From here on out, it gets a little bit more interesting, especially at Alpine. Obviously, they've taken over the Renault Academy as well as the Renault team. Brand new to Formula 1 this season, but Alpine have a few drivers in F2 that are coming through and look incredibly, incredibly good. We've seen Zhao already at Austria. He was in FP1 and drove pretty well in that Alpine car. You know, he's getting a little bit of experience in Formula 1. We see that a lot with test drivers. They sort of take that step into taking free practices and then they finally get their seat in Formula 1. And then Piastri as well, currently F2 champion. He's leading the way in F2 this season. Could be an F2 win for him this season. And we know that the F2 winner usually comes into Formula 1 very, very soon. So I think we could see both of these guys in Formula 1 very soon. And if Alpine push comes to shove, I think they'll probably pick up one of these drivers and bring them through. I think Alpine need a seat in Formula 1. Similar to Mercedes, how they've got the Russell seat at Williams and, you know, Ferrari have that seat at Alfa Romeo. I think Alpine need to find themselves a seat somewhere on the grid where they can put an Alpine driver because these two need Formula 1 experience. These two are good enough to be in Formula 1, in my opinion, next year. And I think Alpine, if they had to pick one of those drivers from their driver academy, it's pretty close between the two. Ferrari. Now, Ferrari have a pretty easy pick, but there's also a lot of prospects for Ferrari at this moment in time. They've obviously got the Ferrari poster boy Leclerc. He would easily be their number one driver. And of course, Sergio Perez came through the Ferrari Academy what feels like forever ago as well. He was obviously at Force India for forever and then at Racing Point. But Sergio Perez, I think, would be a good second driver for them. They could have had Giovinazzi, they could have had Schumacher, they could have had Ilott, who's currently in F2. But I think they would opt for going Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez because it's a good, solid driver lineup. They're both in Formula 1 at this moment in time. They're both experienced at this point. And let's be honest, Ferrari just absolutely love Charles Leclerc. And I know what you're thinking. Well, surely Ferrari's secondary drivers, Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Ilott, are all linked with Alfa Romeo. Surely Alfa Romeo would just be like the secondary team to Ferrari and would pick up those. But no. What I found out is Alfa Romeo in 2020 actually started their own driver academy. This was something that completely passed me by. I had no idea that this had happened until I started making this video. But Alfa Romeo have their own Sauber academy, which they started in 2020. And therefore, they've got their own drivers that they'd want to bring through. They've got Theo Pourchaire, who's currently in F2. And then I had to do a little bit of digging. They've got Peter Pitacek, who is Czech Republic. He's Formula Renault last season. I couldn't really find much out about him. He's only 18 years old. He's sort of slowly building up his sort of self-esteem and climbing through the ranks, as it were, of the formulas. But Alfa Romeo have set up their own driver academy. It's very young. So, like, for instance, the third best driver, in my opinion, that they've got on the books is Emerson Fittipaldi Jr., who's currently in Danish Formula 4. And is 14 years old. So it is a very small academy at this moment in time. It'd be very tricky indeed for Alfa Romeo if they did have to only use drivers from their academy. But maybe someone to watch in the future, and an academy that is slowly going to build up. We know that academies can get out of hand a little bit and get a little bit big for their boots, as we're going to see in a couple of minutes' time. But Alfa Romeo, maybe one to watch with their own academy over the next few seasons. Haas has one driver in their academy program. Very newish to Formula One, obviously started in 2016 Haas, but they've only got Pietro Fittipaldi technically on their books. So if Haas were to have to pick up drivers for their academy, or for Formula One from their academy, they'd only have one for next season, which is very Haas, isn't it? You know, Haas being that team that only has one driver, it would just be very Haas at this moment in time. It would definitely be very funny indeed, but they would be able to at least pick up one driver. Now, we obviously get into AlphaTauri and Red Bull, because their driver academy is just insane. There are so many videos out there about the Red Bull driver academy. They have 4 slots on the grid, effectively. Both AlphaTauri drivers are Red Bull graduates, and then both Red Bull drivers have to be Red Bull driver academy graduates as well. I think AlphaTauri would keep with Pierre Gasly. He is Mr. AlphaTauri at this point anyway, and they'd absolutely love to keep him on the books. And I think, if anything, the fact that the teams are now narrowed down to picking only drivers from their academy probably lends itself to AlphaTauri, in that they'd probably want to pick up Gasly and keep him as well. Then I've gone for Sebastian Vettel, Mr. Red Bull from about 10 years ago now, but he was absolutely insane for Red Bull. Obviously got that move to Ferrari. It started off incredibly well. Thought he was going to win a championship at Ferrari personally, but didn't quite work out. Now at Aston Martin. Will Vettel ever get that opportunity to go back to a Red Bull? Possibly not, but will he get an opportunity to go back to an AlphaTauri? Maybe. And I think, you know, they would pick Vettel to go with Gasly. I think that would be an incredible partnership in Formula One. And if they were narrowed down to just the drivers from their academy, it'd be a very, very good pick to pick Gasly and Vettel. Then we move on to Red Bull. And there are still so many drivers to pick from. I've picked Max Verstappen, of course, Mr. Red Bull of the moment, and Carlos Sainz, who came through the Red Bull Academy, was at Toro Rosso for a little while, if you remember back, before he went to McLaren. And my goodness me, what a driver lineup this would be as well. Absolutely insane driver lineup. If they were able to keep hold of Sainz for this amount of time, Red Bull would be looking at an immense lineup here. Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, and that is, I think I'm going to take a little bit of flack for this, because the drivers that they also could have picked from, so I've picked Gasly, Vettel, Max, and Sainz, but the drivers that I've left out from the Red Bull Academy, Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, Alex Albon, Danny Kvyat, and then in F2, Deruvala, Lawson, Vips. My goodness me, Red Bull could basically have a grid of their own at this point, because they have got so many drivers that are good enough for Formula One. They've got so many drivers that are in and around Formula One seats and are begging for a full drive next season. It would be so tricky if Red Bull had to drive only 4 of their drivers out of this sort of conglomerate that they've got over the Formula One grid at this moment in time. 6 of them are in Formula One at this point in time anyway. And Albon and Kvyat are very close as it is. Deruval, Lawson, Vips could all make the step up to Formula One very soon. We could look at Formula One having 10 Red Bull Academy graduates very, very soon on the grid. That is insane that nearly half of the drivers on the grid are all from the Red Bull Academy. And to be fair, there's somewhere where they could drop off those drivers because Aston Martin is the only team I haven't talked about yet. Aston Martin have no drivers in terms of a driver's academy. They don't have any drivers whatsoever who are part of their Formula One academy. Yeah. So maybe they could take a few from Red Bull and AlphaTauri because they'd very much struggle next year. I mean, Haas at least have one driver next year. Aston Martin would have 0 drivers if there was a rule that was put in where they were only allowed to pick drivers from their academy. They'd have to start an academy very, very soon if that rule did come into place. But I'd love to know, what do you think of this grid? Would it be good entertainment for Formula One? Would it work? Would we all watch still if the drivers could only be from their academy and the teams had to pick purely from their academies? What do you think it would look like? Who do you think would win the championship? Russell in a Mercedes? Max still in a Red Bull? Probably Max at this point, right? But it could be very, very interesting. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, leave a like down below. I'm trying to get to 3,000 subscribers, so subscribe if you are new. We are ever closer to that 3,000 goal. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.